not familiar with UNEP, it's the financial initiative of the United Nations Environmental Programme. Our initiative basically connects UN with more than 500 financial institutions, banks, and insurance, and we work to shape a sustainable finance agenda, and we also develop frameworks on sustainability and guidelines for the financial sector in order to better face challenges linked to environmental, social, and governmental issues. Also, of course, human rights is a cross-cutting issue interconnected with all these factors. So just a brief introduction and comments from my side. During this forum, we have been discussing the critical need to accelerate efforts to access to remedy for right holders affected for business-related human rights abuses. We have also recognized that Pillar 3 of the UNGPs remains largely underdeveloped and unfulfilled across different sectors. So the purpose of this session, as Aline, my colleague, mentioned, is to explore how we can collectively build the path towards effective remedy in the financial sector. Like all business enterprises, financial institutions have a responsibility to avoid causing and contributing to negative human rights impacts, either through their own activities or through their business relationships. This means, for example, their activities, lending, investing, etc. So if situations like this occurs and damage is made, they need to provide for and cooperate for remediation. But this is not only the role that are expected to deploy financial institutions. There is also a key role in exercising leverage, and the working group has already pointed out the unparalleled capacity that financial institutions have to leverage on real economy companies in order to guarantee and to ensure access to remedy. So this session that I will be moderating is divided in 2 rounds. First, we will focus on the current state of play in the region, kind of gaps, challenges, and some efforts that are being implemented. And the second will delve into some recommendations or suggestions on how to move forward in access to remedy in the region. So we will try to be dynamic with the speakers. So before introducing these outstanding speakers that are sharing the table with me, I would like to briefly mention a couple of things about remedy and the approach that we will have here for the discussion. First of all, I would like to say that when we talk about remedy, we are referring to restoring individuals or communities to their position before the harm occurred. Secondly, that remedy involves not only the process that provide redress to right holders that have been affected, it also encompasses substantive outcomes. So remedy is also a matter of quality of remedy, not only a process. In the third place, I want to say that remedy is not just about grievance mechanisms. We need to have a broader approach on remedy ecosystem. And remedy ecosystem means laws, policies, institutions, mechanisms, actors, and the relationship between them in order to enable conditions to access to remedy. So this is a bit the approach that we want to have here. And of course, UN agencies and UNEP in this case are part of this ecosystem of remedy. So at the moment, just to share with you that we are working in the development of a toolkit for financial institutions in order to foster their alignment to the UNGPs. So in remedy, basically what we are trying to work with financial institutions is to provide to them more guidance on how to better understand how they are linked, they can be linked to impacts on human rights. I mean, it's not so easy in practice, it can be complex to determine if they are causing, if they are contributing, if they are direct linked. So we are trying to work on that. Secondly, we are working also to provide guidance on what enable remedy means. What can financial institutions do before harm and after harm to leverage over their clients in order to guarantee access to remedy? And finally, we're also working on how the effectiveness criteria, Principle 31 of the UNGPs, look like for the grievance mechanisms in the financial sector, and trying to develop indicators to monitor these effectiveness criteria. Okay, this toolkit is not here ready to show it to you now, but we will launch it in Geneva in November. So if you are interested, I can then share the toolkit with you, and we can comment a bit more on that. So this being said, I will present the speakers that are here with me. So first of all, we have Wora Suk. It's Mekong campaign advisor at Earth Rights International. She's leading campaign and legal advocacy on business and human rights in the Asian countries. Wora led the campaign against coal and extractive industry as Earth rights, and her experience in the past 10 years heavily focused on monitoring Chinese and Thai outbound investments and human rights due diligence in the coal and dam sectors. Thank you, Wora, for being here with us. And then we have Akihiro Ueda from Japan. He's the stakeholder engagement manager at Japan's Center for Engagement and Remedy on the Business and Human Rights, JSER. It's a non-judicial platform for grievance redress, where they support and promote redress of grievance by members company based on the UNGPs. And then we have here Aaron Pedrosa, he's a from Philippines. He's a public interest lawyer with 11 years of law practice, providing counsel and representation to workers, to informal settlers, activists, farmers, indigenous people, mining and fuel affected communities in the Philippines. And he's co-chair of the Energy Working Group and head of the legal team of the Philippine Movement for Climate Change. Yeah, and climate justice. And then, and then we have Masajo Ogawa, sorry, and she's the Deputy Director for Business and Human Rights Policy Office at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan, with extensive experience at this ministry and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She has been playing a key role in developing and delivering on business and human rights policies. So I will pass the floor now to our first speaker, is Wora from the Earth Rights International. So I will ask Wora if you can describe the current landscape of access to remedy in this region within the finance and investment context. I mean, what are these kind of patterns, gaps, challenges that you have encountered in the work you do supporting communities in access to remedy? Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Wora from Earth Rights International, and my pleasure to be here. Thanks to UNEP for the invitation and the support throughout the preparation of this UN Becha Forum. When we talk about access to remedies, there are several concerns that we have in mind, like how to build the effective remedies. It's one of the biggest challenges that we face in the context of Asia-Pacific region, where it's highly dynamic and complex, and there are vested interests by the large-scale investments, and some of which are located in the indigenous lands and territories. The investment in the form of mining projects, extractive projects, coal mining and power plant, hydropower, and also industrial complex have demonstrated adverse impacts to the community's land, natural resources, and livelihoods. There are common issues that we face throughout the region. There are land grabbing, forced resettlement, and environmental and health impacts caused by those large-scale investments, and these are common amongst the investment projects in our region. What is the role of these financial institutions in supporting this business? So financial institutions and development finance institutions play vital roles in the economic development of the Asia-Pacific countries, where large-scale investments are taking place to fasten economic growth and also generating positive outcomes to the country's economies. The investment funded by the financial institutions generally generate the spillovers into the development agenda of the Asia-Pacific countries. A company which has operations in the Asia-Pacific region where human rights abuses are widespread may find that its conduct is subject to scrutiny by regulators, government agencies, NGOs, socially responsible investors, and its own employees and customers. So the avoidance of not conducting human rights due diligence may cause reputational risk. In their businesses, the operational risk may include the project delay and losing business continuity. So in some cases, such as the case of multinational companies or transboundary investments, the companies may experience strong pressure to withdraw from the region altogether. The positive stance on human rights can help a business to anticipate and manage risk more effectively and help a business to respond more effectively to allegations of human rights abuse. The role of human rights assessment comprehensively is very important that would help the company to establish operations or continue to operate in areas with poor human rights records by reducing the potential for association with poor practices and subsequent public criticism. The role of UN guiding principles on business and human rights is pivotal here, and it indicates that human rights due diligence can be included in the company risk management system, provided that it goes beyond identifying only material risk to the company itself and thus should include risk to the right holders. Financial sector actors play a vital role in the world's economy and also have substantial leverage over a range of other sectors and business activities and are key for ensuring corporate respect for human rights. In this case, I will draw on the practice and experience from the Stat Bank in Cambodia in terms of setting up the grievance mechanisms and providing effective remedies in terms of compensation to the community impacted by large-scale investments such as sugar plantation in Cambodia, and tease out that experience and draws on the interventions while establishing this kind of best practice where human rights due diligence is strengthened is very important role of the financial sectors.
Thank you very much, Wara, for this overview of the complex and dynamic, as you said, as a scenario on the region and the challenges of this large-scale investment and the difficulties that this means to communities for transnational litigation also. And the key role of prevention of due diligence processes, like strong processes in order to prevent harm and this kind of situations. I want to also highlight the case you mentioned, because it's the case of on the national contact point at the OECD is one of the only, one of the only cases that we can find worldwide to explain the responsibilities of the financial institution. It's a case where contribution to human rights abuses was deficient due diligence processes. So thank you for that. So now I will pass the floor to Aaron Pedrosa. We will shift our discussion to development finance institutions a bit. We know that international development banks as well as commercial banks have increasingly taken on commitments on climate change. And these commitments include changing, for example, the composition of their investment or financing portfolios, which involve, for example, divesting in certain type of projects, activities, and industries. Climate change, as you know, is intrinsically linked to human rights. abuses and impact. So I would like to hand over the floor to Aaron, so if he can explain and share with us his experience in a specific process in the Compliance and Advisor Ombudsman, the CAO, is the mechanisms of the IFC, regarding third parties' investments on coal projects in the Philippines. If you can comment your challenge using these kind of mechanisms and some kind of achievement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magdalena. Again, I am Aaron Pedrosa from the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice. As mentioned, we filed a complaint against the International Finance Corporation in 2017. The IFC is the private arm of the World Bank Group. So the challenges we face when and before we filed the complaint included that accountability mechanism in the World Bank, or IFC for that matter, was practically unheard of. It would take an international partner, the IDI, to help us understand the mechanism and the availability of that mechanism. So when we finally had gotten word and understood the process, we decided to engage that process. Second, establishing financial links between IFC and the sub-projects. In fact, of the 19 sub-projects funded by the IFC, ultimately only 11 were found eligible. Later on, this was reduced to 10 when no financial links were established insofar as one of the 11 projects. Take note that the 10 coal projects is equivalent to 3,860 megawatts of coal power. These are all coal plants, by the way. And finally, at the outset, when we filed the complaint, one other challenge was the logistical requirement, the spatial or geographical challenges, considering that these were 19 communities spread across the Philippines. And the fear of reprisal of the community leaders or the affected communities who had second thoughts of coming out and deciding to file a complaint. Take note that in 2016, one anti-coal activist was killed in the Philippines. And in that period, since and up to this day, community leaders have been red tagged, or that's what we call vilification of community resistance. Court cases have been filed against them and whatnot. After the filing of the complaint, the challenges that we encountered included, although there were some wins, like in 2020, the World Bank, through the IFC, issued its green equity approach, which practically said that there will be no new coal commitments. But the loopholes allows financial intermediaries to invest in captive coal and underwrite bonds for coal developers. In fact, the International Financial Corporation supported the construction of Java 9 and 10 in Suralaya, Indonesia, through equity investments through a financial intermediary, that's Hana Bank in Indonesia. This was after the IFC issued its green equity approach. In the case of the Philippines, the financial intermediary involved, the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, in 2020 declared that it will no longer fund and support new coal plants. But 2 years after its announcement, actually this year, we discovered that it has provided new general purpose finance to San Miguel Corporation, one of the biggest corporations in the Philippines, which in fact owns 4 of the IFC-funded coal plants that were part of the complaint. And while we won in the complaint we filed in 2017, the board, IFC board, having decided in 2022 that practically the complaint had basis. By the way, the basis of the complaint were citing specific instances of violations of the performance standards of the International Finance Corporation. And one of the work streams, as included in the Management Action Plan, is assessing and addressing the harms. We have to remember that the IFC, the World Bank, does not have any written policy on remedies. In fact, to this day, they are still deliberating on the remedy framework. So our complaint comes at a time when there is no remedy framework yet. So when we push for the complaint, we had managed expectation. Nonetheless, because we won, we are pushing for remediation of the harms. And this is where we are in. And it would take not just the 19 communities, but global solidarity to push the bank, not just to acknowledge the mistakes it committed, but to deliver remedies that are relevant to the communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for these insightful comments and for sharing with us your experience. I think that, the challenge that communities are facing for using these kind of mechanisms are quite big. And as Aaron mentioned, the fear for reprisals, really understanding the mechanisms is a challenge. And here I have to say we have many organizations in the room, and this is evidence that the key role that organizations can play supporting communities in these kind of processes, and also a call for all in order to support these kind of claims on the development of remedy frameworks in the financial institutions. So thank you for that, Aaron. Now we'll pass the floor to my colleague Akihiro Ueda for JSER. We said at the beginning that we have here a discussion considering remedy as an ecosystem. So also this platform that Akihiro will explain for us play a key role in supporting access to remedy. So we want to learn more about how this initiative work in practice and about your concrete interventions in cases of involving financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magdalena, and thank you, UNEP, for the invitation. So I'm Akihiro Ueda, and my responsibilities in JSER includes stakeholder engagement and also handling grievances as a member of the grievance team. So let me begin by explaining what JSER platform, or what we call engagement and remedy platform, works. So JSER was established only 2 years ago in 2022. JSER is a membership organization for companies, and the number of members has reached 50 and still growing. A significant number of Japan's most prominent and influential companies have become members, including 2 of the big 3 banks in Japan. So when we receive complaints against our member companies, firstly, we notify the relevant parties that we accept the case and prepares what we call initial review report. This report provides an evaluation and analysis of how the allegation, if true, would be viewed from the perspective of international human rights and other relevant norms, as well as guidance and recommendations on the appropriate course of action for the company. We take the necessary steps to follow up on our recommendations made in the report. So normally, follow-up occurs at 1 and 3 month intervals, though this may vary depending on the urgency of the case and other factors. We have received nearly 70 cases over the past 2 years. The majority of complaints thus far have related to harassment and employment issues. However, there has been a notable rise in the number of cases involving serious human rights violations, including forced labor, conflict-related issues, and discrimination. Additionally, until last year, the majority of cases were filed in Japan. However, there has been a gradual increase in the number of reports from overseas, and this year, the number of cases filed abroad has exceeded the number of filed in Japan. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to explain our stance on providing support to financial institutions. Our focus is not solely on financial institutions. However, the financial sector occupies a unique position in business and human rights agenda. Financial institutions offer a diverse range of financial services to a vast number of companies, and their operations are subject to heightened scrutiny. However, financial institutions also have the potential to drive positive change through their support to corporate initiatives. In light of these considerations, we approach our relationship with financial institutions in a nuanced manner. So last November, we received a complaint from representatives of 7 indigenous peoples in Australia. The complainant demanded that financial institutions take responsible action against a company which conduct offshore gas field development project that violated the rights of indigenous peoples. In this case, JSER has analyzed a case in line with the UN guiding principles and other relevant treaties, and also reference to the OHCHR response to a request from BankTrack and other relevant documents. The project in question are typically large scale, involve numerous stakeholders, and are subject to national policies, making them quite challenging to resolve. Furthermore, financial institutions are typically bound by confidentiality agreements, limiting the information they can disclose. Given these circumstances, so there are limits to what financial institutions can do. Having said that, we believe that the channel for engagement with the relevant parties should not be closed. In my opinion, the purpose of dialogue is not only to resolve issues, but also to build trust and gain insights. By maintaining continuous dialogue, we may be able to find a solution. So regarding this matter, we have engaged in direct dialogue with representatives of the indigenous peoples in person in Tokyo. Our member companies are also maintaining dialogue with them. While the issue has not yet been resolved, I believe that it is fostering a relationship of trust between the parties involved and preventing the conflict from escalating further. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Akihiro, for your intervention. I think you made great points. I mean, explaining this initiative that is very interesting and is really an example that can be used, for example, in other regions. But I want to comment a bit on the confidential agreements that you mentioned. I think that there are many financial institutions that are also trying to set this kind of remedy mechanisms and are also facing this kind of issues on how to deal with these confidential agreements with their clients. And I think that is a great point that you mentioned that, and we also need to work on that and some options. OECD has some suggestions on how this can be addressed, on kind of clauses that can be included to provide for clients to provide consent in these cases to disclose specific information. And also I think that your approach is also interesting in the dialogue, but it's quite also challenging dialogue, and so it will be really interest to learn more over the time. How are you dealing with that? So thank you so much. So our last intervention of this first round, Masajo, she's from the government of Japan. Also following our remedy ecosystem that we're trying to think about in these sessions. I mean, laws and policies such as national action plans on business and human rights and different strategies can create and strengthen capacities that are key to enable conditions to access the remedy. So in this regard, I would like to ask Masajo what key measures has the government of Japan implement or is doing an effort to implement to prevent negative impacts on human rights by companies in the financial sector, and how remedy is a bit addressed there. So I pass the floor to you, Masajo. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Masayo Gawa from the Business Human Rights Policy Office of the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan. Our office was established in 2021. It's a relatively new office, but together with other ministries, we've been working to promote business and human rights, especially among industries. I've been engaged in the business and human rights agenda for the past 7 years, while I had the opportunity to participate virtually before, but it's truly an honor to join this session in person. Thank you for the UNEP to organizing this session. I believe the topic we've been discussing is very important. As many colleagues mentioned, that the financial institutions could have significant influence over other industries through their investment and lending practices. So today, I like to highlight that government of Japan has been taking proactive steps to promote respect for human rights among different sectors, including the financial sector. So our National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights outlined the government commitment to promoting the business and human rights agenda. The NAP, we call, also set expectations for all businesses in all industries to prevent adverse human rights impact, including in the financial sector. It also highlights the importance of human rights due diligence and the use of grievance mechanism to address potential issues. And then following the development of NAP, the government conducted a survey of companies where companies requested to develop the guidelines. In response to such requests, in 2022, the government issued cross-sectoral guidelines on human rights due diligence based on international standards like the UNGP's, the OECD's guidelines, and the ILO M&E declaration. The guidelines apply to all sectors, including the financial sector, and encourage companies to assess, mitigate, and provide remedies for human rights impact in their operations. A key aspect of the guideline is that stakeholders suffering from adverse human rights impact have access to remedy. So I just mentioned about the government initiative, but not only government, but of course, industry efforts are advancing. For example, as Mr. Ueda mentioned earlier, JETA, the Electronics Industry Association, has contributed to the JSA's development. I also like to highlight our work with investors. As you know, financial institutions have two roles in addressing human rights. First, as companies to respect human rights in their operations. Second, they have leverage to influence their investees to promote human rights, as well as to ensure access to remedies. So this year, through our contribution to the ILO, International Labour Organization, and the ILO, together with the PRI, Principle for Responsible Investment, and a group of Japanese investors issued a guide on business and human rights for institutional investors. The document is only available in Japanese. Hope the English version will come soon. But it outlines how investors can promote human rights through responsible investment by engaging dialogue with companies, including remedy-related issues. So a key takeaway is the importance of investor engagement. By asking the right question and pushing for correct action from companies, investors can help ensure that companies take action to respect human rights and then create accessible pathways for remedy. So that's what we're working on. So I'll now hand back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masayo, for sharing all the efforts that the government is trying to implement in terms of policies and guidelines to foster financial initiatives to commit on human rights and the UNGPs. So now we will turn to our second round, and we want to hear from speakers some positive messages in terms of recommendations and suggestions on how to move forward in access to remedy, how we can improve the situation we have at the moment, and how we can address a bit of a gap we have in remedy, not only in the region, is worldwide, the situation we have here. So I want to ask Wara, from your experience in the field, what kind of actions you think financial institutions could take to build an effective path to remedy? And I want to hear from you also, because you have a lot of work in the field with communities, and what do you think the role of stakeholder engagement has in the design of these grievance mechanisms to really develop effective mechanism here, people here, individuals, right holders? Thank you.
Thank you, and happy to go for round 2 interventions.
Yeah.
And thank you for your interest so far. When providing funding or financial advice to the business or client, financial institutions can be exposed to the human rights concern which related to business and also its sector. So where financial institutions may contribute to or be linked to negative impacts on people, they should uphold their human rights responsibilities by adopting and embedding relevant policies across the whole institutions and conducting human rights due diligence. So a comprehensive and thorough human rights due diligence in place and the process, which is inclusive to the communities and public participation, is one of the key messages that I would like to set across here. Drawing from the case of the commercial bank, ANZ case, the Australian banks funding agribusiness projects in Cambodia, the communities that are impacted by the sugar plantation in Cambodia work with the international NGOs and peers NGO that support them to file the complaint to the OECD multinational enterprise mechanisms with the Australian NCP in 2011. This is a case that demonstrates that multi-stakeholder dialogue plays very crucial role in terms of supporting communities to have a platform to engage in a dialogues. But the key challenge is that when engaging in a long process like this, it's time consuming. And also it doesn't guarantee that the financial institutions and the businesses would like provide effective remedies for the communities or like grant compensations for the community. The case of ANZ in Cambodia establishing the grievance mechanisms. Later, after the complaint submission, this precedent-setting move makes ANZ the first large commercial bank in the world to adopt a human rights policy that gives communities harmed by ANZ finance projects a real path to justice. So this is one of the critical outcome and for example, like outputs from the complaint submission. And in the communities that face human rights abuse by the business and also IFI like this, the financial institutions like this, Earth Rights International support communities to access to this non-judicial complaint mechanism process in order to seek remediations. But there are a number of challenges faced. For example, the process is time-consuming for the communities, and secondly, it doesn't guarantee that remedies will be provided. What that means in terms of effective remedies is also a question as well. Does it mean restitution, rehabilitations of the natural resources and livelihood that have already been destroyed by the project? So there are a lot to, I think, tease out from different cases. In other cases that Earth Rights support the communities to file the complaint and using the OECD multinational enterprise mechanisms, we found that it may already take 3-4 years to get here about the remedies or the type of remedies that the community want to get. I think I would support for like compensation plus one. Plus one would be the package where communities have also engaged inclusively in the restitution and rehabilitations of those impacts like natural resources, also the damage that the large-scale investment caused. So I think I wrap it up here with the key messages that human rights due diligence is key to the as a role of the financial institutions to engage with the communities.
Thank you, Wara. Just to say to your comment, thank you so much, that also we need to work with financial institutions to understand that due diligence, human rights that is embedded in the UNGPs goes, of course, beyond due diligence, social, environmental, that they are at the moment implementing, in a sense that this kind of due diligence is for a specific project, asset of transaction. Due diligence, it's about human rights due diligence, it's about all the activities, it's about financial activities also. And this means that financial institutions need to identify and manage their impacts also in a portfolio level, identify salient issues and take action is a broader notion that we need also to work and support financial institutions. So now I turn to Masajo. We're a bit run out of time, so if we can get in 3 minutes, what actions could state implement to strengthen access to remedy? Thank you.
Thank you. Access to remedy is a key part of business and human rights framework, but it's challenging to fully achieve. Many companies, including those in the financial sector, have started by developing human rights policies and then conducting human rights due diligence. However, fewer have put in place effective remedy mechanism, I believe. So that shows a broader issue, translating policy commitment into practical actions. One of the major challenges could be that providing access to remedies often needs structural changes within companies. Setting up effective grievance mechanism means creating clear process that is accessible, trusted, and capable of handling diverse issues across global or national operations. It also has to do with cost and resources. So with the guidance we have in place and the industry initiatives underway, now for us it's a time to consider the next steps. So we are looking at ways to address this issue, especially by supporting SMEs, which often lack resources, and focusing on the role of financial institutions and the local banks in this context. These institutions could play a key role in helping companies, especially smaller ones, advise on human rights, including remedies. We are also thinking of organizing seminars and understand the upcoming UNEP tool will provide example of remedies in financial context. So it will be a good reference point to share with financial institutions. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Masajo. Now we turn to our colleague Aaron. Could you share with us 3 measures and actions that could strengthen or improve access to remedy? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Magdalena. Let me just start the timer. So how do we think the situation on the ground can be improved? I have 3 suggestions right now. One is to institutionalize remedies as an integral part of the compliance mechanism or any grievance mechanism for that matter. Financiers, whether direct or indirect, as well as co-financiers, must bear the burden of actualizing the remedies. This must not be socialized, as when government agencies step in and provide relief to affected communities. Financial institutions and corporations must not be allowed to privatize profit while socializing the social, health, environmental, and climate costs. The cost of doing business must not be at the expense of the environment, livelihoods, human rights, and health. Second, remedies for harms must include harms that are not only direct, but also material, cumulative, and indirect impacts, as these kinds of harms are not immediately observed and discerned. For instance, exposure to coal does not yield overnight harms in terms of health or declines in income, or its impact to the worsening climate crisis. And then a final point, there must be a tectonic shift in the way investments are made, not just merely aligning to the Paris goals and human rights obligations, but veering away from the worn-out neoliberal and business-as-usual market models in the face of the existential threats that the people and planet now face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for this reference, and also the thing you mentioned on type of harms. I think that is really an issue that we need to also work on. The harms that are considered for this type of financial mechanisms and the systemic and structural changes that you refer. So thank you for that. And our last intervention before open the floor to your questions and discussion is for our colleague Akihiro. So just to know if you could describe 2 of the most significant strengths of your platform in enhancing access to remedy, and what areas are being focused on further for improvement in the future. Thank you.
Sure. So in my view, that one of our competitive advantages is that JSER is an open platform. And this has numerous advantages for both the complainant and the company. So many grievance mechanisms have their own code of conduct, and issues outside the scope of that code are usually not covered. In our platform, the issue will be accepted and handled as a case if there is a potential violation of RBC principles. From company's perspective, this platform can be considered as both learning platform and a venue for collaboration. We conduct general membership meetings on a biannual basis to facilitate an exchange of ideas and best practices among member companies. Our meetings have included case studies on responding to fact-finding investigations, for example. One of the aims was to prevent the human rights of the complainants from being violated in the process. As I explained, many influential Japanese companies participated in our platform, and many of them share the same issues and also the same supplier. It seems reasonable to me that these companies can respond more effectively and enhance access to remedy for the victims by working together. So due to confidentiality issues and Japan's antitrust law, there have not been many successful cases yet. But we believe that this is something that we should improve in the near future. Lastly, I would also like to share an idea currently under consideration from the perspective of financial institutions supporting corporate initiatives. I agree with Masayo from her first comment of the first round that financial institutions can support corporate initiatives to promote access to remedy as investor. It is important to consider the role of ESG investment, and we are also exploring the possibility of strengthening the remedy function of member companies through dialogue between trusted investors and member companies that wish to engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akihiro. I have a question, but then, I mean, it would be interesting to know how are you working to build trust in communities to really use this platform, to make a legitimate platform for communities. If you can say 1 second something on how this is being addressed. Thank you.
Sure, I didn't expect any question from you.
It's an extra question, sorry.
Yes.
30 seconds just.
Yeah, so I think most of the cases, well, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of the cases, companies simply ignore any of the reports from NGOs.
Okay.
But because our member companies are our member, they do respond to our recommendations and opinions. So in a way, response rate is 100%. And by making dialogue between companies and the complainant, and at least there is a communication going on between these two. And that I hope, and that I believe that build trust and make some positive impact on the remedy process.
Great. Thank you so much for your interventions. And now we open the floor for questions. We will do, we have a lot of questions, so if you think it's okay, we will do a first round and then give the floor to speakers. Yes, we start here. Here, and you can start. Yeah, you can, yeah.
Okay, so now, thank you so much for having me today. And also, thank you so much for the speakers. Has explained us a lot and very good guidelines. And I would like to begin from the Indonesia is one of countries in Southeast Asia that needs support from development financial institutions. Even for developing the tourism area, Indonesia needs loan money from the international financial institution. To get the loan or to get the support from the development financial institution, Indonesia even need to decrease the safeguard, the country safeguard, to get the support. Yeah, but and then it is become the conflict in the field because we need a strong country safeguard, meanwhile they decrease their safeguard. So we hope that development financial institutions also can advise the government to increase their country safeguard. That's the first. The second one, for the getting remedy, yeah, I always say that the fundamental of remedy is transparency and accountability. Yeah. And now I'm working with the impacted community who affected by an international financial institution who support the Indonesia government on developing tourism area in one of small island in Indonesia. Many victims, and until now the eviction happened and many women cannot live normally like us, without house, without land, without a job. So we would like to ask the banks for giving the community a remedy. However, since last year, we asked them to share the document about the land audit and project audit to us so that we can discuss constructively with them. However, until now, we didn't give us. Yeah. So my question is how we can conduct constructive dialogue, positive dialogue, without no trust or no trust each other. They didn't give us the document, the mind or the important document for we discuss. Until now, the suffering is still happening, and we hope that this from this forum I can bring the good answer for the community in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take other questions at the end. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Thank you. Am I the wrong person? Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Okay. I wanted to address a question to Ogawa-san and Ueda-san. So in Korea, we've had a lot of Japanese transnational corporations that have been implicated in what many Koreans would view as human rights and workers' rights violations. And in a recent case, even though we've raised the issue, the company is extremely resistant to any possibility of dialogue with the affected stakeholders. So 2 women workers are in an aerial protest for over 260 days, and the company still refuses any dialogue. Noting that the HRDD guidelines were adopted by the Kishida government last September, and that you are expanding it to the financial sector, we're wondering, is there any good offices that your ministry can provide? Because as you noted, there is a gap between the written policy and the actual implementation. I should add, in Korea too, we are trying to explore the enactment of an HRDD law, and in the first parliamentary debate about it, I guess the Korean Chamber of Commerce said, why can't you have only a guideline like Japan instead of making a law? And so they have the impression of businesses in Korea as well that perhaps there are some weaknesses. So I'd like to ask, how can you play some role to enable stakeholder dialogue? Thanks very much.
Thank you. The lady at the end. Yes.
Hello, my question is for Jay, sir. The first one is, you mentioned that very rightfully so that financial institutions are bound by secrecy agreements, and I was wondering how to have dialogue with stakeholders without hinting that indeed the company involved is our client due to that agreement. And my second question is quite similar to the first question on dialogue, but what is it that makes an engagement successful versus an engagement that isn't, taking away whether or not there's trust? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question from this side. Yes? You.
Thank you very much. I was also just wondering if there are any guidelines, laws, or standards around transferring the onus of proving harm from NGOs and civil societies to businesses. Thank you.
Here, yes, you. Yeah.
Thank you. Just like to acknowledge the UN Voluntary Fund for sponsoring this. And my question to the panel is quite simple. I've heard what you've said, but I really I didn't hear a proper solution to these financial institutions that the moderator mentioned. You've engaged with 500 financial institutions. And then the lady at the far end mentioned there is no guarantee that they will adopt the banks and the private sectors to adopt whatever policy or discussions you have. I didn't hear anything on the future, which is now cryptocurrency, a financial platform that we can use that is decentralized, more transparent, right? And why I'm saying this, because you may say it's dangerous to go to that sector, right? But the top 3 perpetrators of environmental and indigenous people lands own cryptocurrency. The United States own over 200,000 Bitcoins. Who's next in line? China owns 160 Bitcoins. Third, the United Kingdom, over 60,000 Bitcoins. See, they are already in this system. They recognize the system, but you guys still not yet want to recognize the system, but keep talking about a platform or a system or financial infrastructure that has never worked in the Millennium Development Goal. That's why it didn't work, the Millennium Development Goal. The Sustainable Development Goal, as I heard with one of our colleagues from the rapporteur, you have only 5 years left or 6. Only 16% has been achieved. Why? Because you're still using the same financial instruments and not being innovative to see the future. For our indigenous people, it's easy. It could be done. This is one remedy. You mine their land, tokenize whatever's been mined, and give that money to the indigenous people so that they can protect themselves from companies that are causing harm. So this is something I want to see forward, and I hope once the Sustainable Development Goals end, and I'm pretty much sure it won't even reach 50% of its targeted goal, ensure that the next financial system that you're going to run, whatever you want to call it, development goal, try to ensure, because it's very hard for even the Pacific, from the Pacific, to get funding from these financial institutions that are developed at the global north. Right?
Perfect.
These are financial systems in the global north that take so much time for fundings to reach countries like Kiribati, which are 3 meters above sea level. And if we're going to use that same platform, when are we going to be protected from the impacts of climate change? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your intervention. Thank you for all the interventions. I will now give the floor to each of we are a bit running of time, but I will give the floor to each of the speakers for a brief response and a final comment. Please, Wara, if you want to respond and give a comment. Thank you.
I'm not sure which question I will direct to, but this is
you can just
general
choose
comment.
the thing you feel.
So, from our experience supporting the communities who are impacted by these large-scale investment projects and also projects that justify as just transition as well. So we realized that inclusive participations of the impacted communities right in the beginning of human rights due diligence process is very important. And it takes also the willingness and also of the companies and the financial institutions to put the condition of lending to those companies as well to assess the risk. Human rights assessment is crucial right at the beginning of the project cycle and inclusive to the communities who are impacted by the projects. And this is the only way, I would say, to make sure that community voices and the struggle that they face caused by the projects would be incorporated and taken into consideration, either the business, also the financial institutions. So a thorough and comprehensive human rights due diligence is very important, and it should be applied right in the beginning of the project cycle. And all the risks should be assessed with the communities with their inclusive participation. Yeah.
Sorry, and also ask you, because of the question of our colleague from Indonesia on how to conduct a constructive dialogue in between financial institutions and communities. Do you have some advice or some suggestion on that?
So far, the space for multi-stakeholder dialogue is important for us, but we don't have high trust or put very high hope in that process. In order to ensure the meaningful dialogue, I would say inclusive participation of the impacted communities is key. For example, if these projects impacted by communities in the area of like 1 kilometer around the project, we don't engage communities who live 100 kilometers far behind into the process. It's crucial for the business to be genuine in terms of their participations with the communities, and also the communities have to put the condition and also place demands in the process of multi-stakeholder dialogues clearly, and ensure that the compensation is timely provided, and the desired compensation is inclusive to their needs and the impacts that they face. It's not about, well, we could say it's not about carbon neutral. It's not about, this is what you generated and you look for forestation project to cover the harm that you caused, but this is all about reducing and mitigating the impacts that caused by the business in their investments. And also the financial institutions has very important role to play here in order to ensure that human rights due diligence is carried out.
Thank you. And Akihiro, I want to, I mean, if you can respond the question on our colleague at the end on secret and confidentiality, and also engagement that she also referred, if you have a comment on that.
Sure. Can I also respond?
Yes,
to
you can
the
respond
one?
whatever you want, but I think that you have quite a contribution there. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So quickly to the question from Korea. If our member companies are involved, we can accept complaints from you. You can file a report through our website. If you want, please give it a try. And if you have any questions or concerns, we can have a talk later after this session. And on the question about JSER confidentiality and how successful dialogue means, first of all, even though financial institutions cannot really reveal their information, they cannot really disclose that, they can listen. And they do take the information back to the headquarters, and they also talk with the companies or suppliers which are involved. And then maybe it doesn't, it doesn't go to the, it doesn't solve the problem quickly, but it does have some impact, I believe. And as my final comment, this is not just for the issue of financial sector, and I'd like to emphasize that again, the importance of dialogue. And of course, it needs to be meaningful one. And for me, dialogue means, on the one hand, that the companies should really understand the pain and plight of the victims. And on the other hand, that the victims must also be prepared to compromise at some instances. I think it's not an easy task, but I believe it is the first step towards solution. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Aaron, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Same dilemma as the Earth Rights, because we also come from the people's movement. We do not represent the government, but the affected communities. But I do understand the frustration of similar climate vulnerable countries. The Philippines has been ranked first in the last 3 years as most vulnerable to climate impacts among a list of 193 countries. So my responses to the questions or the thoughts about constructive dialogue. Constructive dialogue can and will only happen when there is an exhaustive rethinking of relations and changing of the dynamics between finance and people. As I've mentioned earlier, a tectonic shift in the way investments and in general businesses are made. There is no dialogue when money talks. Second, on the question of the burden being placed on the communities or people, actually, as early as 1992, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the Climate Convention, Article 3, set out the principle called precautionary principle, in that the burden is shifted from the one who alleges environmental harms to the person being alleged to have committed the environmental harms, so that the one being alleged to have committed environmental harms must disprove the allegation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for your response. And Masajo, you have the floor.
Thank you for the comment and the questions. It's appreciated. So I'm going to respond to the question, the lady from the Korea. I'm afraid I might not be aware of specific individual cases, but we've been working on raising awareness among industries and companies. We've been working on raising awareness within the country as well as abroad. So, but I guess it's still difficult to reach out to every single company. But now you brought the point, and thank you so much for this, that there's still improvement to raise awareness. So we will make more effort to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we don't have, sorry, but if you want to do a small comment, but we
Question
really
not answered
yeah,
as well.
I want.
No, it's all right. No, just for the panel.
Sorry, I would.
There's also other people.
No, just...
Sorry. We are running out of time. I want to make a comment on just to end this panel on the intervention of our colleague that is there. Where he shared, all the problems and what they are facing. I think that you, of course, are right what you have said. We are here in these roles trying to do the best we can. And of course, the Sustainable Development Goals are a very broad framework, but we have the UNGPs, and the regulations are now embedding and integrating this and requirement in a compulsory way things to financial institutions. So I think that we are having progress there. I am from UNEP FI. We come from a sustainability broad field, but we are now trying to work on the UNGPs and trying to really support companies and financial sector to really integrate due diligence, to really have grievance mechanisms, and to really have policies and integrate this in practice. So I think you're right. Challenges are huge. There is much to do, but we are trying to do our best. We are also trying to do what we can. So thank you all for participating. I think it has been an active debate, and we have a lot of takeaways from this conversation. Thank you so much.